The glass is cool in your hand, a small, solid anchor in the warm, humming room. The low murmur of conversation wraps around you like a familiar blanket, interwoven with the clinking of silverware and the distant, muted siren of a city that never sleeps. It's a perfectly ordinary evening, one of 1,000 you have lived and will live again. And then it happens. You say something not outrageous, not cruel, not even particularly controversial. Perhaps it's a personal truth, a vulnerable admission, or a belief that deviates just a few degrees from the comfortable consensus of the room. And there it is, the look. It's not a glare, it's not a scowl. It's something far more unsettling, a subtle shift in the eyes of the person opposite you, a slight, almost imperceptible tilt of the head, a silence that follows. Not a comfortable one, but a thin, sharp vacuum that pulls the air from your lungs. In that fraction of a second, the warm, connected space between you and the other person evaporates, replaced by a cold, empty chasm of judgment. And you feel a familiar, frantic scrambling begin inside you, a hot, chemical surge that floods your chest and tightens your throat. It is the urgent, undeniable, and overwhelming compulsion to explain. The words begin to tumble out unbidden, desperate. What I meant was, you start your voice a little too high, a little too eager. You see, from my perspective, you continue, leaning forward, trying to physically bridge the gap that just opened before you. You are building a case. You are providing evidence, context, backstory. You are a defense attorney for your own soul, presenting Exhibit A, your entire life history, your intentions, your hidden wounds, all in the hope of swaying the jury of one. You explain that your childhood informed this view, that a book you read changed your mind, that a past heartbreak makes you sensitive to this particular topic. You are laying yourself bare on the altar of their understanding, hoping for the benediction of their approval, or at least the mercy of their neutrality. But have you ever noticed the profound and terrifying paradox at the heart of this act? The more you explain, the less you are heard. The more you justify, the more you invalidate the very thing you are trying to defend. Your explanation, intended as a bridge, becomes a labyrinth. Your words, meant to clarify, only seem to muddy the waters. You feel your own conviction draining away with every sentence, your truth becoming thinner, more brittle, until it shatters into 1,000 desperate qualifications. You are no longer standing on solid ground. You're sinking in the quicksand of your own justification. Why? Why does the silence of another feel like an accusation? Why is a single questioning glance enough to dismantle our sense of self? What is this phantom court we are constantly on trial in, and who precisely is the judge? We tell ourselves we are simply aiming for clarity, for connection. But is that the truth? Or is this frantic defense a symptom of something far deeper, a wound we are desperately trying to suture with words? What if the person you were truly trying to convince is not them, but yourself? What if this compulsive need to be understood is the ultimate act of self-betrayal? A tacit admission that your truth, unadorned and unexplained, is insufficient. That your existence, as it is not quite valid until it is ratified by an external gaze. We chase validation like a desert wanderer chases a mirage, believing its waters will quench a thirst that, in reality, is born from within. We offer up our inner worlds, our most sacred spaces, hoping for entry into the fortress of another's acceptance, not realizing that we are abandoning our own in the process. This compulsion is not a minor social tic, it is an existential tremor. It signals a profound disconnection not from others, but from the very core of who we are. It is the sound of an inner sovereign abdicating their throne. And so we must ask the great unsettling question: what if the path to true connection, to unshakable self-worth, does not lie in being perfectly understood, but in the radical, terrifying, and liberating act of letting go of the need to explain yourself at all? This urge you feel, this deep and primal need to justify your own reality, it is not an accident of your personality. It is not a flaw in your character. It is a symptom. It is a ghost, a phantom limb reaching for an attachment that was severed long ago. And to understand this haunting, we must first dare to look into the shadows from which it was born. We must uncover the hidden problem, the silent architect of this internal prison. That ghost we spoke of, that compulsive phantom reaching for validation, it has a name. And its origins lie in the most sacred and terrifying battleground of human development, the landscape of your own childhood. The hidden problem is not your insecurity, your anxiety, or a lack of confidence. Those are merely the tremors on the surface. The true earthquake, the tectonic shift that shaped this compulsion within you, is the perceived rupture between two of our most fundamental human needs: the need for attachment and the need for authenticity. For the human child, attachment is life. To be connected to a caregiver is to receive warmth, food, and protection. It is non-negotiable. It is oxygen. Authenticity, however, is the need to be oneself, to feel one's own feelings, to know and express one's own nascent reality. It is the core of a developing identity. It is the soul's first breath. In a perfect world, these two forces are intertwined. The child expresses its authentic self, its anger, its sadness, its wild joy, and the attachment figure says, through their actions, "I see you. You are safe. You are loved. All of you is welcome here." But this is not a perfect world. At some point, you, in your small, developing body, expressed an authentic feeling that threatened the attachment bond. Perhaps her anger was met with a caregiver's frightening rage. Perhaps her sadness was met with dismissal, or your exuberant joy was deemed too much. You didn't have the words for it then, but you learned a terrible, silent calculus in the marrow of your bones. You learned that to be yourself was to risk connection. To be authentic was to risk abandonment. And the child, in its infinite and desperate wisdom, will always choose attachment over authenticity. It must. It is a matter of survival. And so, your unconscious mind, a brilliant and terrified strategist, made a decision. It began to construct a new self, a more acceptable self, a self that could navigate the treacherous terrain of your environment and guarantee your survival. The psychoanalyst Donald Winnicott called this the false self. It is a compliant, adaptive mask, a carefully curated performance designed to win the approval and secure the connection you so desperately needed. This false self learned which opinions were safe, which emotions were permissible, and which parts of your genuine experience had to be locked away. It became your ambassador to the world, your negotiator, your protector. It learned to explain, to justify, to apologize for the inconvenient existence of your true self, which it had hidden away in a deep, protected vault, believing it was too dangerous to let out into the world. This is where the ghost is born. The compulsion you feel today in that ordinary room, it is the echo of that primal choice. The look of disapproval from a colleague or a friend is instantly processed by this ancient, wounded part of you, not as a simple disagreement, but as a life-threatening withdrawal of attachment. Your nervous system doesn't know the difference. The alarm bells ring with the same primal urgency as they did when you were 3 years old. And your false self, your loyal and lifelong bodyguard, leaps into action. It does what it was designed to do. It explains, it justifies, it performs. It tries to repair the perceived rupture and restore the connection at any cost. And the cost, as always, is your authenticity.
This is not merely a psychological quirk, it is a profound philosophical tragedy. The French existentialist Jean-Paul Sartre would call this state bad faith. It is a form of self-deception where you flee from the terrifying freedom of being human. Instead of being a subject who creates their own meaning, you begin to act like an object, a thing to be defined and validated by the gaze of others, what Sartre called the look. When you compulsively explain yourself, you are acting in bad faith. You are surrendering your power to define your own reality and begging another to define it for you. You are saying, "Tell me who I am. Tell me what I'm allowed to be." You are trading the radical burden of freedom for the comforting shackles of approval. The great Danish philosopher Søren Kierkegaard saw this as the ultimate despair. The sickness unto death was not wanting to be the self that you truly are. This frantic explaining is a symptom of that sickness. It is the desperate attempt to construct a more palatable self because you have come to despair that your true one is enough. We are socialized into this. It is Nietzsche's herd morality, the deep-seated fear of being cast out from the tribe for deviating from the collective norm. Your explanation is a fealty pledge to the herd. It says, "Do not cast me out. I am still one of you. Let me prove it." The problem is that your bodyguard, your false self, which was created to save your life, has now become your prison warden. It keeps your truest, most vibrant and creative self under lock and key, convinced it is still keeping you safe. But it is a safety that has become a gilded cage, preventing you from ever truly living. And the consequences of living within this cage, of constantly placating this ghost, are far more devastating than a few awkward social moments. They are silent, insidious, and they are shaping the very fabric of your reality in ways you have yet to even imagine.
This prison warden you carry within you, this loyal bodyguard that has outlived its purpose, it does not rule with iron bars and physical walls. Its methods are far more subtle and therefore far more destructive. It rules through a quiet, relentless campaign of attrition against your own soul. The unseen consequences of living under its reign are not found in grand dramatic failures, but in the slow, creeping erosion of everything that makes your life vibrant, meaningful, and uniquely yours. The price of its protection is the hollowing out of your own existence. The first casualty is your intuition. Think of your true self as your internal compass, a finely tuned instrument that resonates with the magnetic north of your own purpose and well-being. It's that gut feeling, that inexplicable sense of yes or no that rises from a place deeper than logic. But every time you override that feeling, every time you explain away your own inner knowing to appease someone else, you damage that compass. Neurologically, the pathways that connect your rational brain to these deep, intuitive centers of the insula and the enteric nervous system, your gut brain, are like muscles. The false self, by constantly prioritizing external validation over internal signals, forces these muscles into atrophy. Your intuition's voice, once a clear guide, becomes a faint, indecipherable whisper. You find yourself in jobs, relationships, and situations that your soul rejects, yet you cannot articulate why because you have systematically dismantled the very faculty designed to tell you. You are navigating the treacherous waters of life without a compass, guided only by the shifting, unreliable maps drawn by others. From this loss of inner guidance flows the second, more insidious consequence: the curse of inauthentic relationships. The false self is a performance, and a performance, by its very nature, attracts an audience for the performance, not for the real actor. This is a form of cognitive confirmation bias in action. You broadcast a signal of compliance, of agreeableness, of someone who will not rock the boat, and you attract people who need that from you.
You find yourself surrounded by friends who love your agreeableness but have never met your conviction. You enter romantic partnerships with people who are drawn to the mask of the caretaker but would be terrified by your actual needs and desires. You are loved, perhaps, but you are loved for the embassy, not the country it represents. The tragic irony is that this leaves you feeling profoundly alone and unseen in your most intimate connections, which only deepens the primal fear of abandonment and intensifies the compulsion to explain and perform even harder. It is a vicious, self-perpetuating feedback loop, a hall of mirrors where you can never, ever find your own reflection. With your compass broken and your relationships built on a false foundation, the warden then turns to your creative life force. Passion, purpose, innovation, and art are born from the chaotic, unpredictable, and vulnerable wilderness of the true self. They require the courage to be messy, to fail, to be misunderstood. The false self, your warden, is a creature of pure conformity. Its prime directive is to avoid judgment and eliminate risk. So it strangles your most brilliant and life-giving impulses in their cradle. That risky business idea is dismissed as foolish. The desire to write that book is shamed as arrogant. The urge to pick up a paintbrush is mocked as childish. Your life becomes a carefully curated museum of safe choices, a landscape painted in a muted palette of grays and beiges. You may achieve a certain level of conventional success, but you are haunted by a chronic, low-grade ache of emptiness, the ghost of the life you were meant to live, the one your warden convinced you to trade for safety. And finally, when the mind has been silenced, the heart isolated, and the spirit starved, the body begins to speak, or rather to scream. This is the final, undeniable consequence, a truth championed by thinkers like Gabor Maté. The constant, unending stress of repressing your authentic self, the vigilance, the performance, the fear of exposure, is not just a mental strain. It is a chronic, physiological state of emergency. Your nervous system is perpetually simmering in a low-grade fight-or-flight response. The stress hormones, cortisol and adrenaline, which were designed for short bursts of danger, drip feed into your system day after day, year after year. The result? Your body begins to manifest the conflict your mind refuses to acknowledge. Chronic inflammation, autoimmune disorders where the body literally attacks itself, fibromyalgia, digestive issues, migraines, profound fatigue. Your body, in its infinite wisdom, is keeping the score. Your pain, your illness is not a malfunction. It is a desperate message from your imprisoned true self. It is a final, desperate plea for liberation. This is the urgency of the trap you are in. It is not just costing you your happiness. It is costing you your health. It is costing you your life. The question is no longer whether you want to escape. The question is, how do you stage a rebellion against a warden that lives inside your own head? How do you break free?
So, how do you stage this rebellion? How do you overthrow a warden that holds the keys to your own mind? Here lies the most radical and counterintuitive truth of all. You do not fight it. You do not wage war. The path to liberation is not through conflict, for that is the warden's native language. The path is through a quiet, profound, and revolutionary act of compassion. The first step in breaking free is to turn toward your jailer and thank it. You must see this false self, this internal warden, not as a tyrant to be deposed, but as a traumatized, loyal soldier still fighting a war that ended decades ago. It protected you when you were small, helpless, and terrified. It built a fortress around your fragile true self and brilliantly navigated a hostile world to ensure your survival. It has been your most loyal servant. Its strategies are now obsolete, its protection has become a prison, but its original intention was love. So the rebellion begins not with a battle cry, but with a whisper. Thank you for your service. I see you. I understand. But the war is over. You can stand down now. I can take it from here. This single act of internal compassion is the key that turns in the lock. It dissolves the core conflict, ending the civil war that has drained your life force for years. With this truce declared, the practical work of liberation can begin. It starts with the reclamation of a single sacred word: no. Your false self was constructed from a million frantic yeses. Yes to expectations, yes to demands, yes to roles you never wanted. Your freedom, therefore, is built upon the foundation of a calm, centered, and unapologetic no. This is not the aggressive no of anger, but the peaceful no of self-sovereignty. It is a no that is not a rejection of another, but a profound affirmation of yourself. You start small. No, I'm not available to help with that on Saturday. No, I don't share that opinion. No, I don't have the energy for that conversation right now. Each time you say it, the old alarm bells will scream. The fear of disapproval, of abandonment will surge. Your warden will rush to the gates, desperate to smooth things over, to explain, to apologize. And here you take the next courageous step. You learn to tolerate the profound discomfort of being misunderstood. This is the heart of the practice. You must consciously and intentionally allow another person to hold a negative or even incorrect perception of you and do nothing. You let their look of disapproval hang in the air and you simply breathe. You let their silence be their own, not an indictment of you. You let them think what they will think. In that space, that gap between their reaction and your compulsion to fix it, lies your freedom. The philosopher Viktor Frankl, surviving the horrors of the Holocaust, wrote that between stimulus and response, there is a space. In that space is our power to choose our response. In our choice lies our growth and our freedom. Your work is to widen that space. With each moment you successfully withstand the urge to explain, you are teaching your nervous system a revolutionary new truth. Disapproval is not death. Misunderstanding is not annihilation. You are building a new neural pathway, a pathway of unshakable self-worth that does not depend on the weather patterns of other people's moods. As you stop outsourcing your sense of reality to others, a terrifying and beautiful question will emerge. If their validation is not my map, then how do I find my way? The answer is you learn to follow a different kind of signal. You start to listen for the breadcrumbs of resonance. This is the quiet, humble work of reacquainting yourself with your true self. It is not a grand lightning bolt moment of finding your one great passion. It is the practice of noticing the small, almost imperceptible flickers of authentic joy, curiosity, and energy in your day. It's the book you feel inexplicably drawn to. It's the song that makes your heart feel something. It's the sudden, fleeting urge to walk in the woods or draw a silly cartoon. These are the breadcrumbs your true self has been leaving for you all along. Your task now is not to judge them, not to demand they be productive or justifiable, but simply to follow them, to take one small step in the direction of that resonance. This is how you gently coax your authentic self out of its fortress, not by demanding it emerge, but by creating a world safe enough for it to want to. This is not self-help. It is an act of quiet, radical revolution. You are not fixing something that is broken, you are liberating something that has always been whole. Think of Henry Thoreau, who walked away from the clamor of society not with a lengthy explanation, but with the simple, resonant action of building a cabin by a pond. He chose his own reality over the one prescribed to him. You are doing the same, not in the woods of Massachusetts, but in the internal landscape of your own being. And as you walk this path, as you practice compassion for your warden, wield your sacred no, tolerate misunderstanding, and follow the breadcrumbs of your truth, you will begin to feel a fundamental shift. A power you never knew you had will begin to rise within you. You are not just reclaiming your own life, you are beginning to understand that the very nature of reality is more malleable than you ever imagined.
you're preparing for the final, most powerful realization of all.
And so you walk this path. You thank your warden. You practice your sacred no. You learn to sit in the fire of another's disapproval. And you follow the faint, golden breadcrumbs of your own resonance. And in doing so, you are not just changing your habits, you are fundamentally rewiring the architecture of your soul. You are preparing yourself for the final, most powerful realization, the one that makes the entire struggle, all the years of pain and explanation, suddenly, shockingly clear. And the realization is this: the courtroom is empty. The trial you have been attending your entire life, the one where you have served as your own frantic defense attorney, has no judge. The jury box is filled with nothing but echoes. The prosecutor is a phantom created by your own childhood fear. You have been arguing your case with passion and desperation in a vast, empty chamber, begging for a verdict from a power that was never there. The look of judgment from another person, which you have interpreted as the swinging of the gavel, was never about you at all. It was, and always has been, a reflection. You are not seeing a verdict on your soul. You are seeing a mirror of their own inner world. Their discomfort with your truth is a map to the exact location where they abandoned their own. Their need to categorize you, to put you in a box, is a testament to the terror they feel towards their own unexamined chaos. Their judgment is a confession of their own wounds. When you truly understand this, not as an intellectual concept, but as a felt reality in your bones, the world itself transforms. The feeling is one of a terrifying vertigo at first, the dizzying sensation of the floor of reality falling away. But what rushes in to fill the void is not fear, but a peace so vast and profound, it feels like coming home after a century of exile. A lifetime of tension drains from your body. The weight of constantly managing, performing, and explaining simply dissolves. You realize you have been fighting a ghost. And in realizing this, the ghost vanishes, and all that is left is you, standing in the quiet stillness, whole, complete, and needing no defense. Now, imagine yourself back in that room from the beginning. The glass is in your hand, you say your piece of truth, and the look comes. But this time, you do not feel the familiar hot surge of panic. You do not feel the frantic need to bridge the gap. Instead, you feel a quiet, knowing, and deeply compassionate stillness. You look at the person across from you, and you no longer see a judge. You see a fellow human being caught in their own struggle, reacting from their own invisible wounds, imprisoned by their own warden. You have no anger, no defensiveness, only a quiet, heartbreaking empathy. You have nothing to explain because you understand there is nothing to defend, and no one truly to defend it to. Your silence is no longer a void of anxiety, but a space of profound strength. You have become a fixed point of stillness in their chaotic storm. This is the ultimate source of power. It is the realization that your unapologetic authenticity is not an act of aggression or selfishness. It is an act of profound service. By refusing to collapse, by refusing to explain away your own core, you hold a sacred space. Your calm, centered presence becomes a silent permission slip for others to find their own. Your liberation radiates outward. You become a lighthouse. And a lighthouse does not run around the coast trying to explain its light to every ship. It does not apologize for its brightness or justify its position. It simply stands. It shines. And in its unwavering, unexplained presence, it offers a guidepost for all those lost in the storm and searching for their own way home. You stop trying to be understood, and in doing so, you become a point of understanding itself. You stop chasing connection,
and you become a point of connection for the entire world. This is the final freedom. Not just freedom from the need to explain, but the freedom to be the explanation itself. This journey of self-reclamation, of learning to stand and to shine, is the great work of a human life. It is the path from a half-life of performance to the vibrant, dangerous, and beautiful reality of being truly alive. It is the core of everything we explore here together. If these questions resonate within you, if you feel the pull towards your own liberation, subscribe to the channel and join the conversation. For we believe that the most profound change in the world does not come from loud arguments, but from the quiet, courageous, and revolutionary choice of a single soul to finally stop explaining and to simply be.